The Three Calenders, Sons of Kings, and the 5 Ladies of Baghdad by Anonymous. In the reign of Caliph Harun al-Rashid there was at Baghdad a porter, who was a fellow of infinite wit and humour. One morning as he was at the place where he usually waited for employment, with a great basket before him, a handsome lady, covered with a great muslin veil, accosted him, and said with a pleasant air, "Hark you, porter, take your basket 9 and follow me." The delighted porter took his basket immediately, set it on his head and followed the lady, exclaiming, "Oh, happy day! Oh, day of good luck!" In a short time the lady stopped before a gate and knocked. A Christian with a venerable long white beard opened it, and she put money into his hand without speaking. But the Christian, who knew what she wanted, went in, and shortly after brought out a large jar of excellent wine. "Take this jar," said the lady to the porter, "and put it into the basket." This being done, she desired him to follow her and walked on, the porter still exclaiming, "Oh, day of happiness! Oh, day of agreeable surprise and joy!" The lady stopped at a fruit shop, where she bought some apples, apricots, peaches, lemons, citrons, oranges, myrtles, sweet basil, lilies, jasmine, and some other plants. She told the porter to put all those things into 37 his basket and follow her. Passing by a butcher's shop, she ordered 25 pounds of his finest meat to be weighed, which was also put into the porter's basket. At another shop she bought capers, small cucumbers, parsley, and other herbs. At another some pistachios, walnuts, hazelnuts, almonds, kernels of the pine, and other similar fruits. At a third she purchased all sorts of almond patties. The porter, in putting all these things into his basket, said, "My good lady, you should have told me that you intended buying so many things, and I would have provided a camel to carry them, for if you buy ever so little more, I shall not be able to bear it." The lady laughed at the fellow's pleasant humour, and ordered him still to follow her. She then went to a druggist's, where she furnished herself with all manner of sweet-scented waters, cloves, musk, pepper, ginger, and a great piece of ambergris, and several other Indian spices. This quite filled the porter's basket, and she ordered him to follow her. They walked till they came to a magnificent house, whose front was adorned with fine columns and had a gate of ivory. There they stopped, and the lady knocked softly. Another lady soon came to open the gate, and all three, after passing through a handsome vestibule, crossed a spacious court, surrounded by an open gallery which communicated with many magnificent apartments, all on the same floor. At the end of this court there was a dais richly furnished, with a couch in the middle, supported by 4 columns of ebony, enriched with diamonds and pearls of an extraordinary size, and 38 covered with red satin, relieved by a bordering of Indian gold. In the middle of the court there was a large basin lined with white marble, and full of the finest transparent water, which rushed from the mouth of a lion of gilt bronze. But what principally attracted the attention of the porter was a third most beautiful lady, who was seated on the couch before mentioned. This lady was called Zobeide, she who opened the door was called Saifi, and the name of the one who had been for the provisions was Amina. Then said Zobeide, accosting the other 2, "Sisters, do you not see that this honest man is ready to sink under his burden? Why do you not ease him of it?" Then Amina and Saifi took the basket, the one before and the other behind. Zobeide also assisted, and all 3 together set it on the ground and then emptied it. When they had done, the beautiful Amina took out money and paid the porter liberally. The porter was well satisfied, but when he ought to have departed he was chained to the spot by the pleasure of beholding 3 such beauties, who appeared to him equally charming. For Amina, having now laid aside her veil, proved to be as handsome as either of the others. What surprised him most was that he saw no man about the house, yet most of the provisions he had brought in, as the dry fruits and the several sorts of cakes and confections, were adapted chiefly for those who could drink and make merry. "Madam," said he, addressing Zobeide, "I am sensible that I act rudely in staying longer than I ought, but I hope you will have the goodness to pardon me, when I 39 tell you that I am astonished not to see a man with 3 ladies of such extraordinary beauty, and you know that a company of women without men is as melancholy as a company of men without women." To this he added some pleasantries in proof of what he advanced, and did not forget the Baghdad proverb, that the table is not completely furnished except there be 4 in company, so concluded that since they were but 3, they wanted another. The ladies fell a-laughing at the porter's reasoning, after which Zobeide gravely addressed him, "Friend, you presume rather too much, and though you do not deserve it, I have no objection to inform you that we are 3 sisters, who transact our affairs with so much secrecy that no one knows anything of them. A good author says, 'Keep thy own secret and do not reveal it to anyone,' He that maketh his secret known is no longer its master. If thy own breast cannot keep thy counsel, how canst thou expect the breast of another to be more faithful? Permit me, I entreat thee, to say that I also have read in another a maxim which I have always happily practiced. Conceal thy secret, he says, only from such as are known to be indiscreet and who will abuse thy confidence, but make no difficulty in discovering it to prudent men, because they know how to keep it. The secret, then, with me is as safe as if locked up in a cabinet, the key of which is lost and the door sealed. The porter, notwithstanding his rhetoric, must in all probability have retired in confusion if Amina had not taken his part, and said to Zobeide and Saifi, My dear sisters, I conjure you to let him remain. He will forty afford us some diversion. Were I to repeat to you all the amusing things he addressed to me by the way, you would not feel surprised at my taking his part. At these words of Amina, the porter fell on his knees, kissed the ground at her feet, and raising himself up, said, Most beautiful lady, you began my good fortune today, and now you complete it by this generous conduct. I cannot adequately express my acknowledgments. As to the rest, ladies, said he, addressing himself to all the three sisters, since you do me so great an honor, I shall always look upon myself as one of your most humble slaves. When he had spoken these words, he would have returned the money he had received, but Zobeide ordered him to keep it. What we have once given, said she, we never take back. We are willing, too, to allow you to stay on one condition, that you keep secret and do not ask the reason for anything you may see us do. To show you, said Zobeide with a serious countenance, that what we demand of you is not a new thing among us, read what is written over our gate on the inside. The porter read these words, written in large characters of gold. He who speaks of things that do not concern him shall hear things that will not please him. Ladies, said he, I swear to you that you shall never hear me utter a word respecting what does not relate to me, or wherein you may have any concern. These preliminaries being settled, Amina brought in supper, and after she had lighted up the room with tapers made of aloe wood and ambergris, which yield a most agreeable perfume as well as a delicate light, 41 she sat down with her sisters and the porter. They began again to eat and drink, to sing and repeat verses. The ladies diverted themselves by intoxicating the porter, under pretext of making him drink their healths, and the repast was enlivened by reciprocal sallies of wit. When they were all as merry as possible, they suddenly heard a knocking at the gate. Saifi, whose office it was, went to the porch, and quickly returning told them thus, There are 3 calenders, 10 at the door, all blind of the right eye, and have their heads, beards, and eyebrows shaved. They say that they are only just arrived at Baghdad, where they have never been before, and as it is dark and they know not where to lodge, they knocked at our door by chance and pray us to show compassion, and to take them in. They care not where we put them, provided they obtain shelter. They are young and handsome, but I cannot, without laughing, think of their amusing and exact likeness to each other. My dear sisters, pray permit them to come in. They will afford us diversion enough and put us to little charge, because they desire shelter only for this night, and resolve to leave us as soon as day appears. Go then, said Zobeide, and bring them in, but make them read what is written over the gate. Saifi ran out with joy, and in a little time after returned with the 3 calendars. At their entrance they made a profound obeisance to the ladies, who rose up to receive them, and told them 42 courteously that they were welcome, that they were glad of the opportunity to oblige them, and to contribute toward relieving the fatigues of their journey, and at last invited them to sit down with them. The magnificence of the place and the civility they received inspired the calenders with high respect for the ladies, but before they sat down, having by chance cast their eyes upon the porter, whom they saw clad almost like those devotees with whom they have continual disputes respecting several points of discipline, because they never shave their beards nor eyebrows, 11 one of them said, I believe we have got here one of our revolted Arabian brethren. The porter, having his head warm with wine, took offence at these words, and with a fierce look, without stirring from his place, answered, Sit you down, and do not meddle with what does not concern you. Have you not read the inscription over the gate? Do not pretend to make people live after your fashion, but follow ours. Honest man, said the calendar, do not put yourself in a passion. We should be sorry to give you the least occasion. On the contrary, we are ready to receive your commands. Upon which, to put an end to the dispute, the ladies interposed and pacified them. When the calenders were seated, the ladies served them with meat, and Saifi, being highly pleased with them, did not let them want for wine. When the calenders had finished their repast, they signified to the ladies that they wished to entertain them with a concert of music, if they had any instruments in the house, and would cause them to be brought. The ladies willingly accepted the proposal, and Saifi went to fetch the instruments. Each man took the instrument he liked, and all three together began to play a tune. The ladies, who knew the words of a merry song that suited the air, joined the concert with their voices, but the words of the song made them now and then stop and fall into excessive laughter. While their amusement was at its height, there was a knock of unwanted loudness at their gate. Now, it was the custom of the Sultan Harun al-Rashid sometimes during the night to go through the city in disguise, in order to discover whether everything was quiet. On this evening he set out from his palace accompanied by Ja'afar, his Grand Vizier, and Mesra, chief of the household, all three disguised as merchants. He it was who, in passing through the street, was attracted by the noise of the music and of the peals of loud laughter, and had desired his Grand Vizier to knock at the gate, and to demand shelter and admittance, as for three strangers who knew not where to seek shelter for the night. Saifi, who had opened the door, came back and obtained permission of her sisters to admit the newly arrived strangers. The Caliph and his attendants upon their entrance most courteously made obeisance to the ladies and to the calenders. The ladies returned their salutations, supposing them to be merchants. Zobeide, as the chief, addressed them with a grave and serious countenance 44 and said, "You are welcome, but while you are here you must have eyes but no tongues. You must not ask the reason of anything you may see, nor speak of anything that does not concern you, lest you hear and see what will by no means please you." "Madam," replied the vizier, "you shall be obeyed. It is enough for us to attend to our own business without meddling with what does not concern us." After this, each seated himself, and the conversation became general, and they drank to the health of the new guests. While the vizier Ja'afar entertained them, the caliph ceased not from admiring the beauty, elegance, and lively disposition of the ladies, while the appearance of the three calenders, all blind of the right eye, surprised him very much. He anxiously wished to learn the cause of this singularity, but the conditions they had imposed upon him and his companions prevented any inquiry. Besides all this, when he reflected upon the richness of the services and furniture, with the regularity and arrangement everywhere apparent, he could hardly persuade himself it was not the effect of enchantment. The guests continued their conversation, when after an interval Zobeide rose up, and taking Amina by the hand said to her, "Come, sister, the company shall not prevent us from doing as we have always been accustomed." Amina, who perfectly understood what her sister meant, got up and took away the dishes, tables, bottles, glasses, and also the instruments on which the calenders had played. Nor did Saifi remain idle. She snuffed the candles and added more aloe wood and ambergris. Having done this, she requested the three calenders to 45 sit on a sofa on one side, and the caliph and his company on the other. "Get up," said she then to the porter, looking at him, "and be ready to assist in whatever we want of you." A little while after, Amina came in with a sort of seat, which she placed in the middle of the room. She then went to the door of a closet, and having opened it, she made a sign to the porter to approach. "Come and assist me," she cried. He did so and went in with her and returned a moment after, followed by two black dogs, each of them secured by a collar and chain. They appeared as if they had been severely whipped with rods, and he brought them into the middle of the apartment. Zobeide, rising from her seat between the calenders and the caliph, moved very gravely toward the porter. "Come," said she, heaving a deep sigh, "let us perform our duty." She then tucked up her sleeves above her elbows, and receiving a rod from Saifi, porter, said she, "Deliver one of the dogs to my sister Amina and bring the other to me." The porter did as he was commanded. Upon this, the dog that he held in his hand began to howl, and turning toward Zobeide, held her head up in a supplicating posture. But Zobeide, having no regard to the sad countenance of the animal, which would have moved anyone else to pity, nor to its cries that resounded through the house, whipped her with the rod till she was out of breath. And having spent her strength, threw down the rod, and taking the chain from the porter, lifted up the dog by her paws, and looking upon her with 46 a sad and pitiful countenance, they both wept. After this, Zobeide with her handkerchief wiped the tears from the dog's eyes, kissed her, returned the chain to the porter, and desired him to carry the dog to the place whence he took her, and to bring the other. Then taking the whip, she served this in the same manner. She then wept with it, dried its tears, kissed it, and returned it to the porter. The three calenders, with the caliph and his companions, were extremely surprised at this exhibition, and could not comprehend why Zobeide, after having so furiously beaten those two dogs, that by the Mussulman religion are reckoned unclean 12 animals, should weep with them, wipe off their tears and kiss them. They muttered among themselves. And the caliph, who, being more impatient than the rest, longed exceedingly to be informed of the cause of so strange a proceeding, could not forbear making signs to the vizier to ask the question. The vizier turned his head another way, but being pressed by repeated signs, he answered by others that it was not yet time for the caliph to satisfy his curiosity. Zobeide sat still some time in the middle of the room where she had whipped the two dogs, to recover herself of her fatigue, and Saifi called to her, "Dear sister, will you not be pleased to return to your place, that I may also act my part?" "Yes, sister," replied Zobeide, and then went and 47 sat down upon the sofa, having the caliph, Ja'afar and Mesra on her right hand, and the 3 calenders with the porter on her left. The whole company remained silent for some time. At last Saifi, sitting on a chair in the middle of the room, spoke to her sister Amina. "Dear sister, I conjure you to rise, you know what I would say." Amina rose and went into another closet near to that where the dogs were, and brought out a case covered with yellow satin, richly embroidered with gold and green silk. She went toward Saifi and opened the case, from whence she took a lute and presented it to her, and after some time spent in tuning it, Saifi began to play, and accompanying the instrument with her voice, sang a song about the torments that absence creates to lovers. Having sung with much passion and action, she said to Amina, "Pray take it, sister, for my voice fails me. Oblige the company with a tune and a song in my stead." "Very willingly," replied Amina, who, taking the lute from her sister Saifi, sat down in her place. Having sung most delightfully, the caliph expressed his admiration. While he was doing so, Amina fainted away, and on opening her robe to give her air, they discovered that her breast was covered with fearful scars. While Zobeide and Saifi ran to assist their sister, the caliph inquired of the calendar, "Cannot you inform me about these 2 black dogs, and this lady, who appears to have been so ill-treated?" "Sir," said the calendar, "we never were in this house before now, and entered it only a few minutes sooner than you did." This increased the astonishment of the caliph. 48, perhaps," said he, "the man who is with you can give you some information." The calendar made signs to the porter to draw near, and asked him if he knew why the black dogs had been beaten, and why the bosom of Amina was so scarred. "Sir," replied the porter, "if you know nothing of the matter, I know as little as you do. I never was in the house until now, and if you are surprised to see me here, I am as much so to find myself in your company." The caliph, more and more perplexed at all he heard, determined that he would have the information he required for the explaining these mysterious proceedings. But the question was, who should first make the inquiry? The caliph endeavored to persuade the calendars to speak first, but they excused themselves. At last they all agreed that the porter should be the man. While they were consulting how to put the question, Zobeide herself, as Amina had recovered from her fainting, approached them and inquired, "What are you talking of? What is your contest about?" The porter then addressed her as follows: "These gentlemen, madam, entreat you to explain why you wept with those dogs, after having treated them so ill, and how it has happened that the lady who fainted has her bosom covered with scars." At these words Zobeide put on a stern look, and turning toward the caliph and the rest of the company, "Is it true, gentlemen," said she, "that you desired him to ask me these questions?" All of them, except the vizier Ja'afar, who spoke not a word, answered yes. She thereupon exclaimed, in a tone of resentment, "Before we granted you the 49 favor of receiving you into our house, and to prevent all occasion of inquiry from you, we imposed the condition that you should not speak of anything that did not concern you, lest you might hear that which would not please you, and yet, after having received our entertainment, you make no scruple to break your promise. Our easy compliance with your wishes may have occasioned this, but that shall not excuse your rudeness." As she spoke these words, she gave 3 stamps with her foot, and clapping 13 her hands as often together, cried, "Come quickly." Upon this a door flew open, and 7 black slaves 14 rushed in. Each one seized a man, threw him to the ground, and dragged him into the middle of the room, brandishing a scimitar over his head. We can easily conceive the alarm of the caliph. He repented but too late that he had not taken the advice of his vizier, who, with Mesra, the calendars, and porter, were, from his ill-timed curiosity, on the point of forfeiting their lives. Before they gave the fatal stroke, one of the slaves said to Zobeide and her sisters, "Would it not be right to interrogate them first?" On which Zobeide with a grave voice said, "Answer me, and say who you are, otherwise you shall not live 1 moment longer. I cannot believe you to be honest men, or persons of authority or distinction in your own countries, for if you were, you would have been more modest and more respectful to us." The caliph, naturally warm, was infinitely more indignant than the rest, to find his life depending upon the command of a woman, but he began to conceive some hopes, when he found she wished to know who they all were. for he imagined that she would by no means take away his life when she should be informed of his rank. He whispered to his vizier who was near him, instantly to declare who he was. But this wise vizier, being more prudent, resolved to save his master's honour, and not let the world know the affront he had brought upon himself by his own imprudence, and therefore answered, "We have what we deserve." But if he had intended to speak as the Caliph commanded him, Zobeide would not have allowed him time. For having turned to the calenders, and seeing them all blind with one eye, she asked if they were brothers. One of them answered, "No, madam, no otherwise than as we are calenders, that is to say, as we observe the same rules." "Were you born blind of the right eye?" continued she. "No, madam," answered he, "I lost my eye in such a surprising adventure that it would be instructive to everyone to hear it." Zobeide put the same question to the others in their turn, when the last she addressed replied, "Pray, madam, show some pity on us, for we are all the sons of kings. Although we have never seen each other before this evening, we have had sufficient time to become acquainted with this circumstance, and I can assure you that the kings who have given us birth have made some noise in the world." 51. During this speech Zobeide became less angry, and said to the slaves, "Give them their liberty a while, but remain where you are. Those who tell us their history, and the occasion of their coming do them not hurt, let them go where they please, but do not spare those who refuse to give us that satisfaction." The three calenders, the Caliph, the Grand Vizier Jaafar, the captain of his guards, and the porter were all in the middle of the hall, seated upon a carpet in the presence of the three ladies, who reclined upon a sofa, and the slaves stood ready to do whatever their mistresses should command. The porter spoke first, and briefly related the adventures of the morning with Amina, and the kind favours to him of herself and her fair sisters in the evening, which he declared to be the whole of his history. When the porter had concluded, Zobeide said, "Save thyself and begone, nor ever let us see thee again." "I beg of you, madam," replied he, "to let me remain a little longer. It would be unfair that I should not hear their histories, after they have had the pleasure of hearing mine." Saying this, he took his place at the end of the sofa, truly delighted at finding himself free from the danger which so much alarmed him. One of the calenders, addressing himself to Zobeide, next spoke,